This picture looks beautiful. Can I vacation in Cuba? Our lesson objectives today are: what is the geography of Cuba like? What significant events have connected the U.S. and Cuba? By the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain the relationship between the United States and Cuba. Take out your notebooks and jot down this important vocabulary. Embargo, a restriction on the movement of ships into and out of ports. Communism, a political movement that supports a classless society and control of the economy and society by the government. Let's look at some quick facts. The population of Cuba is 11 million people. Its size is 42,000 square miles. It's slightly smaller than the state of Pennsylvania. It's only 93 miles away from the United States, and its official language is Spanish. Let's look at the physical geography. It's an island surrounded by water. You can see the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, and Atlantic Ocean on the map. It's the 15th largest island in the world, and it's known for its beautiful white sand beaches. There are mountains in the southeast portion of the island. On this map, the darker green colors show the higher elevations. When studying geography of a location, we always look at the climate. The climate in Cuba is warm and dry. Droughts and hurricanes are common. Take a look at our charts. The chart on the left shows the temperature, the high, the average, and the low temperatures. And the bar graph on the right shows the average rainfall by month. Can you tell which month has the highest rainfall? It's a close call, but it looks like October has the highest rainfall. Government. Cuba is run by the Communist Party. Communism means the government controls the economy and the society. The president of Cuba is Raúl Castro. The economy of Cuba is impacted by the Communist Party. Cuba has a state-planned economy. Housing, healthcare, education, and food credits are provided by the government. Cuba exports petroleum, sugar, tobacco, coffee, and fish products. The communist government prohibits most private business ownership, home ownership, and travel. We can't talk about the economy in Cuba without talking about the U.S. embargo. Since 1960, the United States has imposed an embargo on exports from the United States to Cuba because Cuba has not moved towards a democratic government and the respect for human rights. Between 2000 and 2015, the United States has started to lighten the restrictions on the exports and travel to Cuba. This embargo has impacted both the United States and Cuban economies, as well as travel and the Cuban population. If you went to Cuba today, you'd notice their cars. Their cars really date back pre-1960, as you can see in this picture, because the United States are not exporting new cars from the United States to Cuba. So it's like they've been stuck in the 50s. The United States and Cuba have a strong historical connection. Under President John F. Kennedy, the Bay of Pigs invasion happened in 1961. The United States unsuccessfully invaded Cuba in an attempt to overthrow the communist government. Then in October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Russians began sending nuclear weapons to Cuba. The United States used a naval blockade of Cuba to prevent the Soviets from finishing the missiles. This period of time was the closest the world came to nuclear war. And if you notice the dates of the 1960s, this is the same time frame that the U.S. imposed the embargo on exports. Let's do a quick check. The U.S. has imposed an embargo on Cuba since the 1960s because of Cuba's human rights violations, the Cuban Communist government, or how close Cuba is to Florida. If you said human rights violations and the communist government, you'd be correct. What type of government does Cuba have? Republic, monarchy, communist. If you said communist, you'd be correct. Let's review our objectives. By now, you should have a better understanding of the geography of Cuba and the relationship that is between the United States and Cuba. If you don't, you should watch this video again. Get your passports ready. In our next lesson, we're going to move to South America.